What's it show?
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Is it showing live?
No. It's loading.
Let's see what the delay does. You have to click the play button.
It's not grass in there.
All right, so it's live. If you guys are watching at home, this is the first time we've done one just like this, and so forgive me as I'm shouting off to the front desk here to make sure that it's going live. So, but it looks like we're going live.
We're going live.
All right.
Live and
Well, we're going to get started then. So I know there is a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to wait just about 30 seconds. Make sure that everyone can get on here, and then we'll get going. I'm going to make sure it's recording. 1 second. I think it's recording. Okay, so you ready to get started?
Sure.
All right. Well, welcome to this webinar. I'm really excited because what we're doing today is we're going to be working on a problem that a lot of dog owners have with their dogs, which is leash reactivity or aggression. You can call it a lot of things. You know, for some dogs it's anxiety-based, other dogs it's territorial-based, you know, whatever the case might be. What we've got here, when we bring him over, make sure we can see him. Oh, so this is Max. Now, I actually met Max. He's 8 years old. So I actually did like a session or two with him when he was a puppy. It had nothing to do with leash walking. It was mostly just manners. Now I'm embarrassed because here 8 years later, he's got this big problem. When did he develop this problem, though?
I don't know.
A few years ago?
Yeah, it's been a few years.
It's been a few years, okay.
Yeah.
And so for a few years, and don't hesitate to speak up, and we're going to get your pretty face on here plenty, so don't worry. I know you're looking very embarrassed over there. Oh, you're strong. And so the problem is, you were mentioning that you got to the point where you can't even like take him on a walk, right?
No, I can't.
He just like pulls you, and like you had to go to rehab.
Yeah, he pulled my shoulder out so bad that I couldn't lift around above my head.
Gotcha.
I did have to go to rehab for about 4 months.
Yeah.
It was a total of 6 months before I could raise my arm.
Gotcha.
So no, we don't walk him.
So Max, you were causing some problems here.
And we had the pinch collar on him when we would walk him.
Yeah, and so we were actually
Stop him.
we were talking off camera that she's got a pinch collar, and he was still pulling like crazy. Hopefully you can kind of see here. He's what is he, like 85 pounds?
I'm sure.
He's a big, strong dog, and so the leash pulling obviously is a deal. You know, it's an issue, but more than that, every dog he sees, he's reactive, right?
Yes.
So is it lunging? Is it bark? I mean, what's he do?
Well, it varies. It varies. Some of it, he wants to play, and he will lunge and go after them more so in a playful way. But there are a few where his hair will stand up and he will bark. I don't know how he determines which ones he likes and doesn't like.
Gotcha.
But it does depend.
Gotcha. And you had mentioned that there was even a dog that he got into a full-on fight with, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. And so in any case, what we want to work on today is we want to work on a technique that we call our step-back recall for, you know, for working on issues like this, for working on reactivity. The first thing I want to do first, though, hey, Noah, we're going to call you up to bat here. If you could grab Cece, because I want to see his reaction. So I'm going to go up to the side here. I saw him a little bit coming in, and it wasn't full-on bark, but he was like pulling, and he was whining and really pulling hard, and so I could see what you're talking about. So when you're in your neighborhood, does he bark at every dog, or is it sometimes just the whining?
Oh, he barks at every dog.
Okay.
Every dog.
So every dog he sees, it's behind a fence over here, it's on a walk over there, he's flipping out?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And so I just want to see how he does, I want to see what our baseline is, and so would you open up that door there so that he can see this dog? And so Noah, don't let her get too far in. I just want to see his response. And so yeah, he notices the dog. Stay right there, Noah. And so he's starting his whining here. And so if this was in your neighborhood, he would actually be going harder right now, right?
Yeah, he
Gotcha.
can see just underneath our fence.
Gotcha.
He's doing good with you.
He's doing good?
Yeah, he's not like that with me.
Gotcha. And I took over the leash because as she came in, he almost pulled her over. And so So Noah, why don't you do this? Why don't you walk her out, walk back in, walk her out. You get some motion on her. I want to see if he's going to respond at all with me holding. And so we're getting a little bit of whining, but you're saying that normally there's a lot more to it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, buddy, what's he doing? What's he doing? He's strong.
You're strong.
I can see how he put you in rehab for a while, or physical therapy. Hey, bud. Hey, bud. And so even if he's not flipping out right now, that's fine, because we know that he normally does. And what I want to do, go ahead and put her back, Noah, if you would. What I want to do is start working on, what's that? Jeez. How does he do towards males? Is it different?
Well, I was just thinking female and he's not fixed.
Oh, gotcha.
He's probably a little less aggressive with her and more.
Gotcha. Next dog we do, we'll bring out a male. We've got a golden retriever here that we'll bring out. In fact, Noah, do you want to bring out Remy? And so,
Do you want me to hold him? Or no?
I'm a little bit worried because he almost pulled you over coming in.
Okay.
And so I'm worried that if he does pull you over, we're going to put that dog in danger. So I'll hold on to him. And like I say, it's not uncommon that, a dog comes to a new spot, he's indoors, and so he's not going to react the same. But what is going to be the same is the methodology that we're going to work on and teach today. And so, oh, hey, buddy. And so, yeah, if I pull on him, he just wants to keep going, doesn't he? Boy, he is strong. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I mean, Madison will walk in. He does the same thing. She's gone right to the ground.
Oh, yeah?
He's dragging her to death because he's chasing after the cat.
Gosh, she's strong. Yeah, I can see where you guys are coming from. So, in any case, for you guys watching at home, wherever your dog happens to be on this scale of, of the aggression, whether it's, it comes out everywhere, or sometimes comes out, what we're seeing is a precursor. I call this, the aggression snowball, to where every dog that's aggressive, it starts somewhere. We can go ahead and put him away now. Where every dog that's aggressive, it starts somewhere, and then it snowballs bigger and bigger. So here at our building, it's kind of cutting off a little bit before it normally does. So most dogs, they're walking on the street, they see a dog, and there's tense, and the tense builds to like fur up, and the fur up builds to like lunging and barking. And for some dogs, that aggression snowball might take 2 seconds. Other dogs might take 20 seconds, whatever the case might be. How fast does he normally react?
He's normally very quick.
Yeah.
I'll know there's a dog outside before I'll ever see it because I can hear it.
Gotcha.
He goes nuts as it walks past our block wall.
Gotcha.
He can smell it or whatever it is. But
gotcha. And so that's probably part of why he's not, giving us the entire aggression snowball right now, is because he doesn't have that territorialness. He doesn't have, his neighborhood, his house. Which is fine, because like I say, it's the principles that apply. No matter what a dog is doing, we can train them anywhere. It's just important that those principles get applied everywhere. And so what we're going to work on today, like I say, is using some training tools, and I'm going to bring up the tools here in a second, to teach a couple, simple is probably the wrong word, but to teach a couple techniques that we've kind of worked on to help dogs understand how to deal with this. Because what's happening, more than likely what he's experiencing is a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress. Now, it's morphed and it's evolved over the years to where, I'm excited and that's stressful, and so I want to go forward. I'm anxious and that makes me feel aggressive. And so sometimes I know he wants to play, other times I know he wants to fight, but it's all coming from like this anxiety. We call it chaos behavior. And so, I always tell folks to picture, let's say we have a baseline. On one end we've got complete chaos, which would be a dog's mind, when he's lunging and attacking and barking, his mind is in complete chaos. On the other end, we've got complete control, right? And complete control is structure and calmness and, things like that. And so when I meet most dogs, they're existing closer to this chaotic end, right? And so when one tiny little variable changes, they see a dog, he was already pulling on the leash, and he was already sniffing everything, and he was already peeing all over the place. So he's already closer towards this chaotic end. So when one little thing changes and he sees a dog, it's a very short leap to become entirely chaotic, bark and to lunge and to be aggressive and so on. Whereas if we've got a dog existing on the other side, more towards that control end, Now in order for him to change mindsets, he's got to make a big mindset leap, in order to do that. I always tell folks to picture, like, you're a nice person, I'm a nice person. If we were to go out walking or something, it would take something monumental for us to get into a fight, right? Well, not fight each other, but to fight somebody else, or fight each other for that matter. You'd probably take me. But it would take a huge, huge thing for us to actually get into a fight and actually try to hurt somebody else or whatever. It would be like someone was really like attacking or really threatening or something. Because for the most part, we as humans, at least humans in domesticated society here, live closer towards this structured end. Now, we might kind of move within that, and sometimes our life is complete chaos. And you probably notice that, when our life is complete chaos, one little variable changes, like you have a flat tire and you lose it, right? Or you stub your toe and you lose it. But if you're living on the other side of the spectrum and you stub your toe, you're like, oh gosh, that hurts, and you move on with your day. Or you get a flat tire and you're like, this sucks, but I'm gonna move on with my day. And so we move in and out of different mentalities, and so do our dogs. They're never always in one spot, they're moving in and out. And so the problem with the dog, the problem that a dog like him has is he has been accustomed over, past 7 years or whatever. He's 8 years old. So he's been accustomed to, when I go outside, it's exciting, and so his chaos, he's immediately pushing himself down that scale towards chaos. And so what we need to do is help push him up that scale. Now, on a literal sense, on like a base level, what it is it's adrenaline. So he goes outside, his adrenaline spikes up, and that causes him to go into the chaos mode. And so what I've found over the years is that the opposite of adrenaline, the enemy of adrenaline, the enemy of chaos is focus. If a dog can focus, very few dogs can exist in a state of mind where they're very focused on me or very focused on a command and be completely chaotic at the same time. Like for example, when we have dogs that bark at the door, somebody rings the door with the doorbell, and the dog barks, we'll teach like a place command, like go to your bed. Oh gosh, you're strong. Go to your bed and lie down. And we do that over and we do that over and we do that over and over and over. And soon the doorbell rings, the dog goes to his bed and he lies down. And because we've taken all of the excitement out of it, because you just got to go to your bed and lie down, we never even have to address the barking because we've increased focus on the behavior and focus on us, and therefore the barking goes away. In something like that, it's like I feel like every now and then there's a dog who lies down in the bed and just keeps barking, bark, bark, bark. And so it's really rare for a dog to be able to maintain structure, maintain obedience, and also be dipping their toes into kind of that chaotic water. And so in any case, what we want to work on today is teaching him how to focus on us. And so there's just a couple key exercises that I want to work on. Now, the first one is if we're walking out that door and he's walking next to our side, right there, that's an enormous amount of focus. And so right there, we've pushed him up that scale. So if he's healing perfectly, it becomes much more difficult for him to make that mental change. Does that make sense? And so that's the first thing that I want to work on is a little bit of leash manners. And so now, one thing that we recommend, that we use a lot, is a pinch collar. Now, it doesn't pinch the dog. You have to pinch the link to make it go in. That's why it's called a pinch collar. But in any case, I always joke with people, it looks like a dungeon tool. You mentioned you had one of these and you lost it, right?
Yes.
But even still, he still pulled and still lunged and barked.
I can get him to pay a little bit more attention, but if we're walking the Jordan River, and when this way and the dog is coming this way, he's gone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that thing is in his neck or not.
Gotcha.
He doesn't care.
And so, this is a typical complaint that people have. They say, well, we have that and the dog still pulls. And so, one thing that I'm always, trying to make very clear to folks is that this is a tool, by itself, it's nothing. It's neither good, it's neither bad, it's just a tool. And so it's the usage which is either going to, make it so that we've got good results or bad results. So for example, you give me a paintbrush, I'm going to give you an awful picture, whereas you give a really good artist a paintbrush, the exact same tool, they're going to do an entirely different thing with it. Yeah, they're going to make something really great. And so the good thing here is we don't have to turn you into a master. We just have to teach you a couple simple skills with this. Let me see if this is the right size. But you're a fatty. You are fatty. So I find that one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're, oh, hi buddy, when they're starting to train a dog with a pinch collar is they still just walk normal and they just kind of pull back on the dog. I don't know if that's what you guys are doing or not, but dogs have what's called opposition reflex. And so what that means is that, you know, even with a collar like this on, a lot of dogs, they, you know, we're going out on the street, the dog's pulling, we pull back. They oppose that tension, not because they're thinking of it, not because they're choosing to do that, but because reflex tells them, you know, we got tension coming this way, you got to go that way. It's actually, you know, I've heard it described as a leftover, you know, leftover reflex from ancient days when these guys were hunters, whether it was, you know, descended from wolves or coyotes or whatever. You know that, you know, the ancient dog bites the deer tries to go this way, and so the ancient dog digs in this way. And so it's opposition reflex, and we as people sometimes have it. Some people have it strong, some people have it weak, but opposition reflex often means that, you know, you'll see people walking down the street and they're pulling as hard as they can against their dog, and their dog's pulling harder. And we'll even have people say, oh my gosh, this dog is so dumb, he's choking himself and he can't even breathe. Reflex doesn't care. You know, if I'm choking and you hit me right here on my knee, my leg's still going to kick. You know, it's reflex. And so, so it's not an intelligence thing, it's just simply a reflex thing. And so what we teach is a method that, and here in this room, we don't have a ton of space to do it, but hopefully we have enough to kind of work on it a little bit. We teach a method that we call the crazy man method. And so what that is I'm going to walk him around a little bit.
Okay, so I remember.
Okay, gotcha. And if he's with me, great. If he goes too far ahead, instead of pulling back, I'm just going to change direction. So come on. If he goes too far, come on. Come on. Good boy. Come on. And so I'm allowing the leash to be loose, but just barely. Come on. Good boy. And now if I was standing still, in fact, we're going to set him up. Would you kind of talk to him, Madison, see if he'll come over to you?
Come here. Come here, Mr. Morris.
He's like, you're tricking me. He's like, I'm no dummy.
It's because I'm here. Hi, baby. Come here.
Come here. Hi.
So if I was standing still, it would just be a quick little check and go back to
There's a
loose.
ball in here. You might go for the ball.
You might go for a ball? Yeah, go ahead and grab the ball.
I can't reach it.
That's fine. Let's see. And so it's like I say, one of the big mistakes that people make. Go ahead and grab it. Good boy.
Oh, that's good.
And that's a good thing about this tool is it's not a pain-based tool. It's just kind of a slight little compression. Now he's still happy. And so, so like I say, the big mistake. Let me grab that from you. The big mistake that easy, that a lot of people will make is they'll try to match force with force. They'll try to match strength with strength. Easy. Good boy. And so it's more of a leverage and an angles and a speed game than it is a strength game. Because if we're going to play a strength game, you're going to lose.
He's gonna win, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's like your size. He's bigger than your daughter. He's going to win a strength game. And so we can't play a strength game. Good boy. You're thinking about it, huh? Easy. Good boy. And so we're not going to win at a strength game. We've got to use angles to our advantage. And so that's where, like I say, he goes ahead. You'll notice the leash is loose the whole time, except for that split little second, you know, and then it goes back to being loose. So for example, if I'm walking, come on, I might give a couple quick taps on the leash rather than pull him. Good boy. Come on. Good boy. Come on. Good boy. You see, every time he loses focus, I'm changing direction. So we teach, you know, I've always taught that you gain focus by teaching what I call spatial awareness. He needs to be aware of his space as it relates to me. When he's pulling your daughter down the street, he is not aware of her space at all. He's not aware of where she is, what she's doing, what she wants, what she cares about, what's important to her. All he cares about is, I want to get to where I want to go. And so by creating distance, we create what's called spatial awareness. And in creating that little bit of distance, a little bit of a correction, suddenly, you know, it puts him in a position where he's going to be paying attention to me. So just like 2 minutes ago, just standing here, he's pulling, already he's becoming very deferential to the leash. And the beautiful part is I don't have to use a whole lot of strength. If you notice, I haven't been like cranking on him. It's just been slight little turns, you know, and quick little tap on the leash in the new direction. Come on. Good boy. I've got to make some left turns too. Come on. Good boy. Come on. So he got a little bit too far, so I just changed. Oh, good boy, good boy. So you see he's already starting to gain some focus. Oh, he's a good boy. Oh, he's a good boy. Good boy. Good job, buddy. Yes, you're happy, huh? And so with just a little bit of direction, a little bit of directional changes, he's starting to really, really focus in. And so you say we did this 8 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, I didn't keep up on it.
Here's the thing. I mean, a lot of dogs will pick, you know, if they've never done it, will pick up this fast. And so there's a chance that he's just a smart dog. And there's a chance that, you know, somewhere locked in that little brain of his, you know, he's like, hey, 7 years ago I did this, or 8 years ago I did this. And so, but in any case, walking him like this, where he's in this state of mind, you can tell. I mean, if you look, and I don't know if you guys can tell on video, but if you look at his face, he's like much more relaxed right now, 2 minutes later, than just a few minutes ago. He's like looking around, what can I do, what can I do, what can I do? Focus kills chaos. You know, focus is the enemy of chaos. And so I'm going to walk around a little bit more, then I'm going to have you do something. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. He's a lot better.
I noticed you keep him on your left side. Does it matter?
Come on. Come on.
Because I'm the right side. I always have him on my right side.
So it doesn't matter. It's habit. You know, I've been walking dogs on my left for 20 years. So like, you ever try to put your pants on the other leg first?
I've never thought about it, but now I'm going to.
Try it tomorrow. Like every day I get dressed, my left leg goes in first. Like do a little experiment. Try to put your right leg in first. It's like, whoa, what am I doing? So for me, when I try to have a dog walk on the right, that's what it is for me. I'm like, this just feels off. I don't know how to do this. And so, anyways, it doesn't have to be on the left. It can be on either side. Left is tradition, but tradition doesn't mean anything. You know, if you're training a competition dog, you know he has to be on the left. But
or hunting.
Hunting, yeah, because you shoot the bird and the shell casing ejects on the right. You want the dog on the left. And so, do you guys hunt with him?
Well, not anymore.
Okay, you used to hunt with him?
Yeah, I used to take him out shooting with us.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you might want to do the left. I mean, if that's something you might want to get back to, it's shooting or something, you might want to do the left. Did you do the right because you're right-handed?
Because I'm stronger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I needed strength.
And that's where a lot of people are.
Right.
And so a lot of people are in that boat. This is not a strength exercise, though. I don't, you know, yeah, I'm stronger than him, but I'm not using a whole lot of strength. And that's the value of this tool. This tool is a leverage tool. You know, one of the big problems that you'll have with like a harness or his flat collar or a choke chain even is that it has 100% surface area. You know, so when the dog pulls and you try to give a little tug, any tug you give is lessened because it travels the entire length of the dog's neck. Which means if you want the dog to feel it, you got to crank on it. And so, number one, cranking on it isn't, I don't like doing that, but it doesn't work very well either. I mean, to just use an enormous amount of force doesn't work. I'd rather use leverage. So, because this has very little surface area, you know, I can use much less. And like I say, you know, we maintain a happy dog. He's still here, tail wagging. He's just learning a whole new set of manners. And so, let me give him to you here. And so I would try your left. I know it might feel a bit weird, but try it because in case you guys ever go shooting again with him. Good. And any leash communication you give should be real quick. It's got to release super fast. Yeah, there's something over there that's distracting, so let's keep doing that area. So now this illustrates, for those watching at home, this illustrates a super important concept. A little bit faster release. There you go. Good. This illustrates a really important concept because not too long ago she was using this tool, but the dog was still pulling like crazy. I always tell people there's 3 things standing in between you and your dog being perfect. The right tools, the right techniques, and some consistency. So you had the right tool, you even had consistency because he was wearing it every time. What you didn't have was the right technique. Because just changing this is a lot different, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt.
You notice how he's like,
he's on my leg.
he's like looking up and yeah, he's almost a little bit too close.
He is very.
So now here's the challenge. When you go home and try this, just kind of as a heads up, when you go home and try this at your house, you know, you're going to find that he's going to regress because he's so used to pulling in your neighborhood that he's going to regress a little bit. So I would do the first several, I mean, go as far as you can, but I would plan in my head I'm going to go out. We might not get much further than the driveway. You know, we might just kind of get out on the sidewalk and do a little bit of back and forth and go back in. That's fine for beginning, you know, for a beginning effort. And as he gets better, I'm going to go a little bit further. Because in here, I mean, he hears dogs and he smells dogs, but he's not seeing dogs. And we're in a room. There's not a ton of distractions. You know, if we had a nice mobile camera with Wi-Fi, we would take you outside, but our Wi-Fi only extends to here. So, but in any case, we've got to. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult at home doing this for real. But so, like I say, just plan on getting as far as you can get, and then go from there. So what I want to work on now. Well, before we move on, does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Does this seem doable?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Why did you say it like that? You seem like you're very nervous?
No, that doesn't mean I have to do it. That's all.
Yes, you have
That's
to
all.
do it.
You just have to do it.
Yeah, and you're gonna feel better. He's gonna feel better. It's now I know you're super busy. You work. You've got your kids. I know you're super busy, but if you can get 20, 30 minutes to this, you know, it's gonna make such a difference in his life. In fact, proper leash walking always has what I call it a collateral effect. And what I mean by that is when we get a dog heeling properly next to our side, we find fairly quickly that, hey, he's calmer over here. You know, I've worked with plenty of dogs where we start doing this and they're not chewing over there and they're not aggressive over here. And so we work on this one thing, but it starts, you know, collaterally moving into other parts of the dog's life. Because what this does is promotes a ton of leadership. He's paying attention to you rather than paying attention to everything he wants. This promotes a ton of focus. And again, focus is the enemy of adrenaline. Focus is the enemy of chaos. And so we start giving him 20, 30 minutes a day where he's existing, you know, much calmer, much more relaxed. And so, like I say, as we start doing this and we get that leadership, we get that calmness, we see a ton of good things start to happen. So what I want to work on next is a method that we call step back recall. Now, step back recall is a method I kind of invented, it was probably about 8 years ago out of necessity. And what it was, I had a client, she had a big dog, 160, 170 pounds. It was a Mastiff, and she was incredibly aggressive. Anything she saw, man, woman, or child, she was really aggressive. She would lunge, she would attack dogs, stuff like that. And so, like, I remember my first session sitting down at her house, like, I sit down on the couch, and the dog's, like, pounding the door in the bedroom, like, trying to get out and trying to get me. And she was telling me, she's like, well, I live down the street from the farmer's market. I just want to take my dog to the farmer's market. And I'm like, holy cow, the dog is like busting through the door right now, pulling a Turner and Hooch. But in any case, so we spent the first little bit getting the dog to stop trying to kill me. We got that under control. So now it's time to go to the streets. So we got a pinch collar, put the pinch collar on, and we're trying this method, you know, the crazy man method. And I can kind of get the dog to do it, you know, pretty well. But even then, it was a little bit of a challenge for me because we're talking huge, strong dog. But the owner, she was small, and there was no way she was getting this done. She could not handle the dog. She could not do anything. The dog literally outweighed her probably by about 40 or 50 pounds, if not more. And so even with a pinch collar, it wasn't happening. So we started working with an e-collar, and actually on very low levels. But we started teaching a recall. Recall meaning to come and call. Have you ever called one of these?
Yes, we had one because we would go out riding on four-wheelers and we would go out hunting and we would have that on him.
Okay.
But it died.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And I never replaced it.
So we tend to use very low levels. In fact, I'll have you feel it here in a second.
I think
Why
I've already felt one.
Why don't you bring him just over here?
Sorry.
Yeah, there's something over there that smells good. And so in any case, we start working on a recall. We call it the here command, and we'll start working on the same thing here with them. So we start working on the recall, and we're walking down the street, and the dog starts what I call the aggression snowball, right? So we're walking down the street, and the dog sees something, and she's puffing up, and so what I had the owner do is step back and here, call the dog. Of course, the dog didn't want to come. So use a little bit of low-level stimulation. The dog's like, okay, she comes. We release the stimulation, but then she would lunge again. And we do it again here, and then she'd lunge again, and we do it again here. This would happen 10 or 12 times, you know, and finally the other dog would pass or she would calm down or whatever, but it took a bunch of repetitions. Fast forward a few weeks though, this was she was a teacher and this was summer break, so she had a lot of time. I come back a few weeks later, and we're walking down the street and she sees a person again or whatever, and she starts her aggression snowball, and the owner steps back here and the dog would come. Maybe a correction, maybe two, but you know, sometimes no corrections, but the dog would come and she would pay attention better. Fast forward another few weeks, here we are walking down the street and she sees a dog and she looks at her owner. She sees a bike, she looks at her owner, because in her mind she's like, I've done this like 300 times now. I walk down the street, I see the bike, I get nervous, and you're back there calling me. I walk down the street, I see the kid, and I get nervous, and you're back there calling me. And so over and over and over, we took the dog's trigger, we kind of reconditioned it, repackaged, and said, okay, instead of reacting out when you see a trigger, pay attention to me. And again, we use that spatial awareness. We step back, here, call the dog. She didn't want to come, we use a little bit of correction. She comes, and then we allow her to choose. And so this happened over and over and over to the point where the dog saw the trigger and would actually get better. You know, she would start walking more close, and she would get better because she's like, well, I've done this before. You're going to make me pay attention. There's praise. There's good things involved. And she felt better. You know, it's not like she felt good. It's not like he feels good when he's lunging at dogs. He does it because on some level he feels like he has to. You know, that there's some anxiety there. He's nervous, and so he feels like he has to show this aggression. And so what we need to do is we need to convince him that there's a different way. And again, if he's focused on me, he is always a good boy. You know, 100% of the time, if he's focused on me, he's a good boy. He's focused on you, he's a good boy. That other dog, we know he's not a good boy. So we've got to change that focus. And so again, focus is built through spatial awareness, and that's where this step back, we call it the step back recall. So that's where the step back recall, where we step back, use some low level stimulation, call the dog, is super powerful. Now, as we do this, there's a few key things. We're gonna, bring out some dogs. We're gonna work on the recall first, then we'll bring out some dogs. But as we do this, there's a few key things. As we're doing the step back recall, we've got to be very fast. And what I mean by that is, we'll give a free command. Free means there's no correction. And so normally, I tell a dog to sit, and if he doesn't sit, I'll maybe give a little correction on the leash, right? And so I give that free command. That's what I'm referring to with a free command. And so I am going to give a free command. I'm going to say here, but almost immediately I'm going to give a little bit of stimulation and have him start to come. Now the reason why I do it like that is because what I'm looking to do is create a reflex, because I want him to see another dog and reflexively think to look at you. And so reflexes are built on timing. So there's this example I always use. Let's say, let's say I take a word max. I say max and I flick you immediately. So it's like max flick, max flick, max flick. Really quick. I say the word and really quickly I'm flicking you. If I do that randomly over the course of a little while, we're going to find. Let me hold him here. Good. Hey, bud. If I do that randomly, what's going to happen is I'm going to come up from behind him and say max, and you're going to flinch because I've required your brain to speed up in relation to that word, right? And so I've actually created a reflex because I've given your brain a word and then a split second before there's an outside stimuli. And so we want him to have a reflex. Now, normally when I tell a dog sit, it's okay if you think about it for a second. But when we're doing the step back recall, I don't want him to think. I want pure reflex. And so what's really important as we do this technique is that we're really quick. Another thing that we've got to be aware of. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get another strap. Hey, Serenity, can you find me another strap? This strap isn't big enough, so even if we just switch out a collar or something, just real quick if you could. And so we've got to be fast. We can't use a lot of leash, and so a lot of people are so accustomed when they've got a dog with reactivity or aggression, is the dog starts lunging and they're like pulling back as hard as they can because they want to keep everybody safe. And I get that, we've got to keep everyone safe, so you've got to make sure you've got enough distance. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to step back and here, and I'm not going to use hardly any leash at all, because when you use leash, a few things happen. We're going to kick in that opposition reflex, and you're going to find him being that much more amped up and trying to move forward and get to the other dog. But also, when we use a lot of leash, we remove a lot of the decision-making process from him. So if I pull him over here, he didn't choose to move over here, I made him move over there. Whereas if I step back and I'm using stimulation, he can fight against the stimulation, or he can, be compliant. but it's his choice. So if he chooses to move away, it's a huge, huge deal versus I'm forcing him to move away. And so, like I say, a lot of folks, and this is probably you, in the moment get very flustered, and they're like, I got to get out of here. And we start using a lot of leash, and so I understand why it happens, but it tends to work against us. We've got to be really, really careful about stuff like that.
I noticed I was doing that even with that one.
Yeah.
Standing here trying to
Yeah, and you're
not
constantly
stuff on the ground or whatever. I was pulling it instead of the quick. That's what we used to doing that.
Yeah, and like I said, you know,
Trainee.
the more proactive the dog is in fixing his mistake, the sooner he doesn't make it. And so if I'm doing a lot of pulling, he's not being proactive. He can't be proactive. So I've got to give him some decision making. That look good? All right, Fatty, come on. Good boy. Sit. Good boy. Oh, do you want to feel it?
We had one.
So this is a pretty average level. Do you feel that? Yeah, most people can't really feel it. We might be a little bit higher, we might be a little bit lower, but that's kind of average.
Okay.
So it's the same thing with the pinch collar. Before, using kind of the wrong technique, you had to use, let me put it on if I could, I want to make sure it's on snug enough. So using the wrong technique, you were kind of covering up the wrong technique with a lot of force. You know, you were pulling on him quite a bit with the pinch collar. It's the same thing I find with the e-collar, that when people, that when a lot of folks start using it on their own without exactly knowing what they're doing, they end up using a lot higher levels than they need to. And so this tends to be a much better communication tool than a punishment tool. So, you know, for example.
Does that have a vibrate on it? Does it have a, so the one that I had a vibrate and it had a shock.
Yes, this has vibrate.
Is it a shock?
Yeah, I call it stimulation, because on the levels that we use, I mean, you felt it.
So I'll say, out of all the times that we used it, maybe 5% of the time we used the shock part of it.
Oh, okay, so mostly
normally
vibration.
it was the vibrate. Normally if I could get the vibrate quick enough,
Gotcha.
then I could get him to listen.
Gotcha. Oh, yes, you're a good boy. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use low level, and low level is different for every dog. What I'm looking for from the dog's point of view is like slight irritation, if anything. Like he's like, that itches, or he kind of turns his head. I don't want to see any pain or anything, because if we start introducing a lot of pain, then what we do is again, we're making the dog less proactive. He's not thinking with pain, he's just going to be like, you know, freaking out. And so what I've got to do is provide an outside stimuli that says, here's a problem, what do you do with it? And then he's got to figure out what to do, which in this case is turning around and coming back to me. Now, when we use e-collars with our clients, we use this for, this means go to your bed and stay. This means come to me. This means heal. So this can mean a lot of things. But in this context of what we're going to do today, we're going to do the step back recall. Like I said, if we do the step back recall well enough, it gets to the point to where he sees another dog and he's paying attention to you rather than to the other dog. So the first thing I want to work on, I'm going to spend just 5-6 minutes here working on recall. Another dog. Now, it's important that we teach a dog what to do with this. And what I mean by that, I always kind of present this is very non-compelling, whereas a leash is very compelling. It's obvious what I want. And so I have to good boy. Hey, come on, sit, 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 sit. I know it smells so good, huh? Come on. Okay. Okay. Smell again. Here, here. Good boy. So that time I just held down for a brief moment because he started to come pretty quick. In fact, I'm going to grab a long leash. Shirley, can you grab me a long line real quick? so I can let him get a little bit further away. Yep. All right, there you go. All right. And so I'll let him get a little bit further away. Okay. Okay, let's do something. Like I say, everything we've been doing is focus exercises. We're getting a lot of focus. Here, here, good boy. So you see, he's just barely feeling it. I'm actually going to go down a little bit. So that's about the level I had you feel. Good boy. You see how much focus we're getting? Which is a good thing, because as he came in, I'm going to work around our smell a little bit more, because the smell is still a little bit of a challenge for him. But as he came in, he was lunging, he was pulling towards everything. Here, good boy. So there was no stimulation. Good boy, because he just came the first time. So when I'm teaching it, I'll give him a second to think about it. Because when I call him, you know, not every time ever does he have to like book it back to me immediately with no thought. But when we're doing the step back recall, when we bring another dog, I'm going to change that. So you'll notice I'm saying here, and then probably about a second and a half later, if he hasn't come, then I'm using the stimulation. Whereas, and this might seem like a small difference, but it's a huge difference. When I'm doing step back recall, it's more like here, here, you know, and on that second one, I'm already holding it down. And so here, here, good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Yeah, you're getting it, huh, buddy? Good boy. He's doing everything he can to pay attention. Oh, you're such a good boy. Good boy. Here. Good boy. Here, here. A little bit itchy. Come on, come on. And so I was still holding it down, because what I wanted to realize, like I say, I was kind of equating this with confusion. This is just a confusing little tickle. And I don't want him to think that if you feel a confusing tickle, all I got to do is itch it away. I need him to realize, no, 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 when you feel it, you got to pay attention to me, because I might be telling you to come, I might be telling you to sit, I might be telling you to go to your bed or whatever. And so I'm going to give him, here, good boy. So yeah, and now granted, he's learning super fast. Not a ton of distractions here, but what we're seeing is literally within minutes, this little tickle is meaningful. Whereas, you know, before, the first time I held it down, it wasn't. Here, here, so hold it down, little, good boy. So as I hold it down, there's a little bit of leash pull when I'm teaching it. Now when I'm doing the setback recall, I'm generally not using a whole lot of leash. Here, here, good boy. Good boy. Here, here, good boy. Good boy. And again, just kind of like the pinch collar, I kind of always joke that, sit, good boy, that the pinch collar looks like a dungeon tool. When people don't realize this looks like a, you know, a dungeon tool, it looks awful, it looks painful, you know, all sorts of stuff. Sit, good boy. But when these things are used properly, they're leverage tools. You know, I'm using an incredibly low level.
Yeah, I couldn't even feel it.
Yeah, it's just a little tickle. I mean, it's just barely enough to grab his attention. Now, when we bring out the other dog, I might not. I might go a little bit higher, you know, because he might elevate a little bit. But very quickly, he's starting to realize with just a tiny little correction how to walk properly, just tiny little stimulation how to come when called. And so it ends up being a very humane way to train when it's done right. We're not killing the poor dude's little spirit. You know, he's still happy and, you know, still excited. And so it's just a matter of this is teaching. You know, it's not punishing. And that's where a lot of people get, and you didn't, because I mean, you've used these tools before, but a lot of people, before they realize what these are, think that these are punishment tools. You know, like, oh, bad dog zap, bad dog crank. And for a long time, you know, still a lot of trainers use them that way. And for a long time, they were used that way. But there's so much better way to do it. Here, here, so I hold it down. I'm pulling ever so slightly here. Still hold it down, still hold it down. Now I release. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. So that time, the distraction was bigger because he was right next to you. And so I needed to hold it down a little bit longer and pull just a little bit. And so the key thing here is when I'm using stimulation like this and I'm helping with the leash, is to help him the most that I have to, the least amount possible. And so if I help him more than I have to and I'm really pulling, he doesn't have to think. If I'm not helping him enough, then he's not going to get it. And so I have to help him just enough, but not too much. Let me do it one more time, then we'll have you try it a few times. Here. Good boy. Good boy. Sit. Oh, you're a good boy. Oh, you're a good boy. Good boy. Good boy. And so, sit. So the key, I'm going to pass him over, but the key things are, we give him one free command. If he obeys, that's great. I praise him. If he disobeys, I'm not mad. I'm just going to repeat the command, but I'm going to hold this down until he starts to come. The second he starts to come, I release that button. Sound good? All right. So this is the button you're going to use, that black one right there. One next to the red button. So you're going to have to get him distracted.
Down.
What's it all? What's it all? What's it all?
A little tangled.
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
And so you step back a little bit, give him a free one. Oh. You're a very wise dog and you're 8 years.
And I'm going to push it.
Okay.
He's just itchy.
Just itchy.
He just has 3 collards on.
He's got a lot of blame. All right. So,
Come.
good. And on the second one, did you hold it down for a little bit?
Stay down. I did, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's like I said, you might hold it down for a split second and boom, he comes. You might have to hold it down for 3 or 4 or 5 until he starts to come, but yeah. Let's try that a couple times there.
Max, come. Come.
Good. And one thing that you're doing that's really helpful that I want to point out to the folks at home, you're going backwards. That's good because that really draws the dog in. It creates some of that spatial awareness, and so going backwards is a good thing.
Max, come. Max,
Hold it down.
come. Max, come.
Hold it down.
Max,
Release.
come.
Good boy. Good boy.
Good.
So is this making sense what you want to do?
Yeah.
So like I say, it's a little bit different than what a lot of folks do, where they just put the collar on and start hitting buttons. We want him to really understand what those buttons mean. Let me grab his leash. And so now that he's got a little bit of a foundation with that, just drop that. I'll grab the remote from you. What I want to do is start applying it to other dogs. And so what we're doing is a various, there's a few steps to our approach in getting a dog to stop lunging and barking at other dogs. First is the foundation of making sure he just walks better, so that when he does encounter the other dog, his mind's already in the right place. And the second part is if his mind does shift and he starts to go down that path, how do we address that and make sure, and that's where the step back recall comes in. So that's what I want to finish up with here today is now that he understands at least a little bit that tickle means come back, I want to start doing it in the context of other dogs. So, hey Noah, would you grab Remy if you could? And so what I'm going to do is the second I see him show anything.
Can you do it like if we were walking on the Jordan Parkway?
Yeah. So if I'm walking here, it's like this little dance move because it's here, and I keep going back, and I might have to move over to the side and over here. And so you got to get creative with it. The better you do it, the sooner you don't have to, because he just self-corrects at that point and realizes how to pay attention. And so, so in any case, the second I see any sort of interest, that's his snowball, because we know that it starts with the ears up and showing interest. And so here, so I hold it down here, and you see I've used very little leash. Good boy, good boy. And so we actually are on the same level, so I haven't had to go up. Here, oh, good boy. So you notice I'm using no leash at all. If I was pulling, here, good boy, good boy. If I was pulling, I'd probably be seeing a different result. Here, good boy.
Okay, so you're doing that every time because he starts to whine.
Yeah,
right?
so
the second he starts to whine to do that snowball, you're...
Any sort of snowball. Now, for you folks at home, your dog's snowball might start with a whine. For a lot of dogs, it starts with really intense. Here, good boy. So I have to be real quick. For other dogs, it might be an intense glare. Here. Other dogs, it might be, they might start with the lunging. And so you've got to even watch for like tiny little body language things. Here, good boy. Good boy. So I'm going to do this a few more times because he's already starting to. Now, dogs when they're stressed, sit, good boy. And so now he's actually focusing on me. Oh, what a good boy. What a good boy. When they're stressed, they've got 3 options available. They've got fight, flight, and avoidance. And so he's choosing typically fight. I'm going to bark at it. This stresses me out. I'm going to bark. I'm going to lunge. In certain cases, I'm actually even going to attack. And so we know we don't like fight. I also know we don't like flight. Flight is no good. You know, the dog doesn't think, he just runs away, and so that's not a good thing. And so if the dog is going to be stressed, I'd rather he goes into avoidance. Now, avoidance is where he just looks away and pretends he doesn't see what's going on, and that's fine, because avoidance tends to lead to acceptance. You know, if he avoids this dog and the next dog and the next dog and the next dog, he's like, there's nothing wrong with dogs. And so he accepts the presence of dogs. Right now, this is acceptance, because he's not in fight, he's not in flight, he's just like, he's not in avoidance.
Yeah, he's not whining.
He's just accepting it. And so I'm going to get, as I get closer, his threshold will probably change. Here. And so, and I don't know if you folks can hear, but every time he starts to whine, that's what I'm doing. Here. And as we lower the threshold, and so this is another important thing to mention, that, you know, if your dog lights up at 200 feet, you might have to work 200 feet and get it down to 150. And 150 has to turn into 100, and then, you know, and so on and so forth. Because, you know, right now we're 15 feet away. As I get to about 10, he starts whining again. So the threshold changes. I've got to work him at that threshold for a little while. If we work him at 10, you know, probably at 5, you know, he's going to start doing it again. And so at each different threshold, you know, where he starts to feel that anxiety again, I've got to work him on that step back recall. But right now, you know, when, here, good boy. When you guys first came in, his threshold, and every dog you saw, he was like pulling and whining and freaking out. And now, good boy, yes, that's so much better. That's so much better. I'm going to get a little bit closer, come on. And so you see, as he gets closer to the dog, he actually paid more attention to me. And here, and it was a little bit of avoidance as well. So it was kind of like, that dog stresses me out, let me look away. But in his efforts to look away, he looked to me. And that's what I want. I want him to defer to me, because his judgment sucks. His judgment tells him, attack that dog, bite that dog, bark at that dog. He's got lousy judgment. He needs to be paying attention to my judgment. Here, good boy. And so if I need to, like I say, you know, I can go off to the side. The thing is, I have to get him physically and mentally turning away from the trigger in order to see some success with this. So now our threshold is 10 feet, and he's fine. He might start whining again any second, because this is here, because this is new to him. But we're working him down this threshold. Sit. Oh, he's a good buddy. Good boy. We're working him down this threshold, and he's getting better and better each time. Good boy. And the good thing is we're at really low level. Good boy. And so this is a little, you know, as he's nudging me here, I'm not going to put a ton of attention on that, because that's him feeling stressed and saying, hey, fix this, you know, pay attention to me. And so I'm just going to be kind of cool, and even, you know, I don't want to like I don't want to enable that and have him, you know, become like overly whiny. Sit. Another thing, you know, just when we're standing still, it's always a good idea for the dog to be anchored, you know. And so as he got up, a dog standing is much more likely to start whining and going forward. Here, good boy, is much more likely than a dog that's sitting. Sit. Let's have you come in just another 2 feet, Noah. Hey, big guy. Here. So I'm still holding it down. Here, good boy. So now what happened there is the threshold got smaller. Sit, or, you know, here. Good boy. Good boy. Here. Good boy. Good boy. Here. Good boy. So not only did the threshold get smaller, but this dog brought it, sit. This dog brought in a new energy. He was excited. And so he's got a little bit of adrenaline, which is going to kick in here, which is going to kick in a little bit of adrenaline for him. And so, good boy. And so when that happened, the threshold got smaller. This dog brings adrenaline. I had to do it again. And so you're going to find this when you practice this, that, you know, you might have to practice with that dog behind the fence 14 times before he's really good. And you might have to practice first at 30 feet, you know, for the first 3 or 4 times, and then 20 feet the next, you know, the next several times. And so he's scaling really quick, and, you know, very quickly we're breaking down these thresholds. But that's not always going to be the case. Here. That's not always going to be the case in like a neighborhood setting where there's a lot more going on. And so just be aware of that. But like I say, so, you know, now we're at 6 or 7 feet. And he couldn't tolerate this an hour ago. Right now, he can tolerate it just fine because I've taught him. Now, there's still a lot of teaching that needs to be done. You know, this needs a lot of repetition. But in an hour, I've taught him, when you feel stressed, pay attention to me, and that feels better. And I'm going to require it. You know, here, good boy. I require it, but sit, sit, sit. Good boy. And so I want you to give this a try. So let me give this to you. Why don't you go take him over there, have him sit, you know, walk around for a second, and then bring him, you know, about to the edge of the carpet here. And run. Good, so you have right about to the edge of the rug and just sit there. Now Noah, why don't you walk out kind of quick, and then walk right back into about the same spot. And so I want you to watch him. And I'll yell out. Good. Good. A little bit less leash. And so, yeah, you do be careful. I mean, don't let the leash go.
No, I got it on my wrist. So keep it there.
So, yeah, but you're wanting to pull him with that leash.
Yeah, that's my bad habit.
Yeah, everyone does that. You know, in fact, most people are like yanking on the dog. Everyone does it, so don't worry about it. Let's bring you up to the carpet again, and Noah, we're going to have you do the same thing. We're going to have you walk out and then walk back in real quick. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
That's where I have to learn.
Yeah, and that, you know, like I say, it's a natural tendency. Everyone does that. Good. And so, in fact, there's clients that I work with that we're 3-4 sessions in where I'm still telling you, no, don't use that leash. And so the quicker people get it, the quicker the dog gets it. But yeah, it's one of these things where it just takes like mentally deciding, okay, I'm not going to do that, and then just not doing it. And so let's do it again. Let's work on your skill set here. So bring him out, bring him to the edge of the carpet. That's good, good, good. And let's go ahead and put him in his crate. And why don't you bring Cece out? And so, you know, what we're seeing here, that time he's wanting to, like, he's jumping the gun. He's like, oh, I'm feeling nervous. And so he started coming back. Like, you start moving a tiny bit, and he's already coming with you. Now, that's not ideal because I don't want him whining and like, building up in the first place. But it's a good progress for, like, a first session because typically he is not coming back. Typically, he is doing everything to go forward. I mean, to the point where you're losing, you know, you're pulling your arm out of the socket. And so the fact that he's starting to get more, much more focused, I want to see him stop whining. You know, I want to see him bring it down a little bit more. But like I said, this is great progress for just the first session. It's feeling different, right?
Yeah. Now I feel like it's me.
Yeah.
That has to learn this stuff. Like,
yeah.
Okay, which one am I using?
And this one, you know, and the step back recall is one of the most, for our clients, it gets one of the most difficult things because you're doing several things at once. Not only are you doing them once, but you're reacting to a dynamic environment. And not only that, you're doing things so fast. And so, you know, I've done it with 1,000 dogs now, and so it becomes very, you know, natural. But for someone that's just learning this, you're actually doing just fine, you know, especially for just learning this. And so, yeah, go ahead and kind of bring her to the edge of the carpet here. And so, and he's not giving us any reaction, so that's good. And he's calm, he's in acceptance. He almost went into avoidance where he was looking at you a little bit. On camera, you guys might not be able to see that entirely, but yeah. And so what he's building here, he's doing good with her. Why don't we go ahead and put her back? Yeah, that's impressive, huh? He's doing way better.
That's impressive. I couldn't do that any other time.
Yeah, and so for him to stand 4 or 5 feet away from a dog and not lunge is huge. Now, again, it's on the back of the right tools, the right techniques. And so I mentioned there's 3 things: tools, techniques, and consistency. That's the only 3 things standing in the way of anyone trying to have the perfect dog. And so with these tools, with these techniques, we can see it works. You know, it works for him. He's doing good. The only thing lacking at this point is consistency, because you just learned it right now. And so, you know, what he needs to do this, you know, every day. Get out and see a dog, recall. Get out and see a dog, recall, so that it starts to become a knee-jerk reaction. And again, the better we are with the timing, the sooner it actually is reflexive. To where, like I say, what we see is the dog walking along, sees the dog, whoop, you know, the owner has to do nothing. The dog just self-regulates, looks up to the owner and says, great, you know, this is, you know, pays attention. And so I know I've thrown a lot at you. I'm just looking how long we've gone here. Oh, almost exactly an hour. So I know I've thrown a lot at you in the last hour, but everything makes sense, seems doable?
Yes.
Good. And so
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So should I be the only one doing this with him, or should she be doing it with him, and my boys be doing it? Should it be a family affair, or?
No offense to Madison. You probably wouldn't be great at this at first. Most 11-year-olds aren't. No offense. Are you offended? Why are you flipping me off? No, I'm just kidding. You guys can't see on the camera, but she is just giving me the net. No, I'm kidding. But most 11-year-olds aren't going to be great at this. Nothing against 11-year-olds. I've got 4 kids of my own. They're wonderful, but they wouldn't be great at this. I would probably teach it to your 17-year-old and your 23-year-old. And so what you would want to do is you would want to get him good, and then start walking with her so that she can handle him. And you know, once it's reflexive for him, where he's just like, oh, pay attention, then start having her take over a little bit more and stuff. But this can be a little bit confusing. This can be a little bit, you know, fast and stuff like that. I always tell people, err on the side of caution. What I mean by that is you cannot overcall your dog. And so if you call your dog, because oftentimes when we walk in and the dog's starting to snowball, and I'll tell the owner, oh, do it. And they're like, well, is he really, you know, he's just kind of whining. And I tell them, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, we can call him a million times. We can't overcall, but we can undercall. You know, so if I miss opportunities to call the dog when I needed to call the dog, we could be in trouble, you know, because that snowball's gonna get bigger. And like any snowball rolling down a hill, the bigger it gets. And so oftentimes when I'm working with someone, the mistake that they'll make is the dog's whining, they're not doing anything. The dog's getting tense, they're not doing anything, they keep walking. The dog is, you know, the dog is going through the steps of the snowball, and suddenly the dog's lunging, and they're trying to do this, and that same low level isn't working because the dog's adrenaline has just gone through the roof. And so what we want to do is the second we notice anything, boom, I'm already back there. And I'm committed to it. I might do it once if I need to. I might do it 10 times if the dog is really struggling. But I'm going to commit to it. And in doing so, we can tend to use very low levels, and it's easy on the dog, it's easy on us. And like I said, we get that reflexive behavior. So err on the side of caution. If you even think he might be thinking naughty thoughts, you're going back. Because if nothing else, you just practice a recall, and practicing a recall is fine. Very quick, you're doing good with that, but be very, very quick with this. So yeah, any other questions? Good. Good. So for you guys at home, if you have questions, I would encourage you to email us or give us a call. For those that are watching that are here in Utah, if you'd like us to help you with this, go to tietheDogGuide.com. And if you're outside of Utah and want to learn how we do this, we've got a new DVD course called Transform Your Dog in 60 Days. So just go to transformyourdogin60days.com. That's 60days.com, and check out what we got there. But yeah, he's doing great. So just keep at it, and he'll keep doing great. Sound good?
Thank you.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you guys for watching.